I've talked to people that have tried it once or twice, like not for me. And I referenced this with you previously that, in the 1950s or so, research started coming out about sensory deprivation that was negative. McGill University had one where people went into psychosis, became incredibly anxious. Now, I doubt it was really made in a pod or in the type of things we're talking about with float tanks, and more so maybe even on the torture realm of things. But
No.
for those people out there, and others, they're anxious. They're always in their heads. And let's be honest, that's a lot of the population these days. Is floating good for them? And what type of advice would you have for those that are saying, listen, I tried it. I kind of panicked a little bit. I was in my head too much. It wasn't for me.
Totally. Yeah, I think there's a few main points hit there. Naturally, sensory deprivation in general, like if we Google it, if we Google sensory deprivation, we may get some wild stuff that is a little bit different than float therapy. Float therapy is technically a form of sensory deprivation, although we try to, as we try to market our industry, try to steer clear of the sensory deprivation aspect and getting pulled into that, because sensory deprivation, prolonged sensory deprivation, where the client or the recipient didn't have any control over when they were going to get out, whether they were going into it or not, or any of the circumstances that are in there, maybe not even sure if something's going to pop out at them or whatever's going on in there, is a totally different experience. A lot of times filled with a lot more fear. That when someone goes into one of these pods, one of these open float tanks, which has no lid over the top at all, you're just in this room that is silent, that is dark, that you opted to go into, and you can freely get out of at any point in time if you want during that session. So I think that's a big thing. So it's just important for people to remember, you're not locked in there. If you want, like our Vitality pods, we got like a light button right inside the tank. If they want to press it on, and maybe the first session, they're not ready for the silent darkness. That's cool. They can go in and they can soak up the benefits of the red light therapy or some of the other chromotherapy benefits we have in there. So if you're in there, you're in the light, whether you're in there, you plug your phone into the aux cord in the back of the tank and you're listening to your favorite song or powerful frequencies or guided meditations or hypnosis tracks, been really effective inside the tank as well. I'm sure we can get into that more. But yeah, also just remembering, if you want to get out of that tank at any time, you totally can. Some people go in for the first session, they pop in for 5 minutes and say, hey, I had my dose. I got to feel it. But then next time they go in and they're in for 20, they build up from there. On the other side, maybe someone stays in for that whole 60-minute session, but like you said, the mind was overactive. They didn't have the tools or the tactics to be able to quiet the mind or bring their mind to this place of one-pointedness, which is a big piece of my philosophy here. Something that helps make the float session a lot more enjoyable and impactful, But then what we see is maybe it takes them for their first session, maybe it takes 40 minutes for them to drop in to that deep relaxation. They get 20 minutes of the deep parasympathetic benefits, but then they go in for their second float session and they're able to relax in 15 minutes, because their mind's a little less hyperactive. It's been in that environment before. It knows it's totally safe. And then by the third session, they're able to drop into that in 5-6 minutes. Be able to drop into that deep relaxation. And then as we make this more of a practice, people are able to drop into that relaxation. Once they felt it, they felt the switch in consciousness, what they have to do internally, how they can take some control and control over their nervous system and their body and their mind. Then they can start to drop into that more instantaneously with practice,
Yeah. So you're basically saying, like, advice wise for people that are nervous and anxious and want to try floating is kind of taper in and do it at your own level. You don't have to throw yourself into 60 minutes of complete silence, just sitting there with your thoughts, basically, kind of
Totally.
eating away at you.
Totally.
But still, for people that, are of the anxious level, even a few minutes can be a lot. What are your best tips for really kind of gaining hold of your mind when all you have is your mind? Meaning most anxious people right now find solace in social media as a distraction, find solace in Netflix to zone out of their overactive mind, find solace in drugs and other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, here you kind of don't have that. You're stuck with your mind, and that's really it. And that's a scary thought for some. So what's your kind of best advice as you go into a float session for those overthinkers?
Yeah, great question, man. I feel for me, when you go into there, like we said, a lot of times we are unconsciously distracting ourselves to try to maybe escape our thoughts or quiet our thoughts or not hear them as clearly. But there's Mahatma Gandhi had a beautiful quote, say the mind is a beautiful servant, but a horrible master, right? I feel a lot of people, their mind is running the show up top, and many people haven't had the experience, or they haven't developed the tools to help them realize or come to the deep realization that deep inside we exist beyond our body and beyond our mind. But a lot of times people become so identified with their body and with their mind that every thought that comes up, they're so identified with, like imagine someone with ADHD. I work with a lot of clients with ADHD, for example. I was with one the other day, and he was sitting there, we were having a conversation, but he was so identified with his mind that every thought that came into his awareness got ripped over to. So whatever he's thinking about, the candy shop over here, or what is my mom doing? And then his awareness is over here, or what am I got to do later? And his awareness is over here. He's at the mercy of his thoughts, and his mind is being his master. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So as we can learn to cultivate an awareness behind our thoughts and just watch our thoughts without being as identified with them, it could be a much more pleasant, peaceful experience because we're not at the mercy of those thoughts. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
A technique we'll sometimes do is, so really the philosophy is our mind, we just have to recognize our mind for what it is. It's a entity that is just thinking,
Mm-hmm.
That's its job. It's its function. Our minds think. It's what it does. So if I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try to meditate, a lot of people go into the flood experiences, like, I'm just thinking so much. I can't stop my mind from thinking. But that isn't the point. We're not supposed to be, most people aren't able to, nor even should this be the goal, get your mind to stop thinking altogether.
Yeah.
So people are sitting there in meditation and they're trying to stop their mind from thinking any thoughts at all. But really, we just have to recognize our mind is going to think, it's what it does.
Always.
So a little practice we can do is we can feed our mind instead of trying to shut it off altogether, which may be a stressful experience. If we can just feed our mind one predominant thought, we ask our mind, hey mind, can you just think about this one thought and keep your awareness here for even just 3 minutes, eventually the entirety of the whole float session, and eventually outside the float session as well. We give our mind a task. Now it's our servant. We give it our task to keep its awareness on this one predominant thought and don't drift away from it. And now maybe we say, hey, mind, all I want you to think about is when I breathe in, all I want you to say is breathing in. Breathing in. As I breathe out, my mind just says breathing out. So I breathe in, breathing in, breathing out. It just says breathing out. And if I can keep my awareness there and start bringing my mind to this place of one pointedness, now what I can start to do is now whenever another thought comes into my awareness and it thinks about what am I going to do later? What's this person thinking, etc. Any thought that comes in besides breathing in or breathing out, I can more easily notice, and anything other than the task, I can just let it go. We can keep our awareness back on that. We just let it go, breathing in, breathing out. Whenever another thought comes up, we just allow it, let it go, don't identify with it, bring it back to the task. And you start fine-tuning the awareness of our mind and start to work with it and cultivate a more harmonious relationship with it, I feel.